You're listening to Blue Please here on CynicalBrit.com with myself, Total Biscuit. Okay, what else do we have for you? Things. Cats on my bloody PS3! Get off! Get off the PS3. I will throw things at you. Seriously. I've got this... What have I got to throw out? I don't like these strawberry mowums, so... oh, actually, this cherry? I don't know. Get off that bloody computer thing! Thank you. Goddamn animals. Right, okay, let's go on. Shall we? We have one other topic I would like to discuss, and that is archaeology in general. Archaeology... oh, weird, isn't it? It's very odd. A very unusual profession. One would expect that it would be a rather unusual profession. It certainly should be, after the 5 or 6 years of non-professions that we've had. And by non-professions, of course, I don't mean they haven't done any. I'm talking about the fact that, honestly, they've really not done enough with them. You would think that after the initial professions, they would learn that maybe professions should be a little bit more interesting. There are a wide variety of games that do professions an awful lot better than Blizzard does, honestly. And for God's sake, I'm talking about freaking Vanguard does crafting better than they do. Pretty bad, man. Think about it. Vanguard's awful, and yet Vanguard has better crafting. I think that EverQuest has better crafting, Lotro has better crafting, DDO has better crafting. Frickin' Eve has better crafting, man. Everything has better crafting than WoW. Crafting has been one of the low points of the game. I always like to say that WoW is competent at everything, and which is why it's such a success, because it's a all-in-one package. It is. It's a package of various features and elements that work pretty well together, and none of them are bad, per se, with the exception of Wrath Heroics. So, what exactly is wrong with crafting? Well, for the longest time, crafting has been so very, very boring. Oh, man. You know, I've always liked the idea of creating things. I've been a big fan of it ever since I got into gaming. I liked games that allow me to create. So, we're talking about things like, say... SimCity is probably one of the first games. Let me think back. Was it SimCity? No, there's one before that. There was one before that. I can't even remember the name. It was on the BBC Micro. I was about 4 years old. And... it wasn't Twin Kingdom Valley. That was a adventure game. There was something else, like Yellow something, I can't remember, whatever the case. It was a game that allowed you to manage a village and try to, like, grow crops and stuff like that, and you'd create little houses and stuff, and you'd reinforce the dam to make sure it didn't blow and kill everybody. And compared to all of the other stuff, the things that were on the BBC Micro at the time, and indeed any other computer format, we're looking at stuff, you know, bear in mind this was 1987. We're talking about fairly basic shooters, some adventure games, a couple of basic racing games, things like that, but there's mostly shooters. A couple of platformers here and there. Actual games that allowed you to create something were fairly rare. And then, of course, SimCity came out, and it just kept going and going and going, and I've always had this attraction to games that allow me to create things. I think one of the games that I've sunk an awful lot of time into, and will no doubt continue to do so, because it is fantastic, is the one and only X3. X3 is part of the X series by Egosoft, and it is a space-based exploration and management game. It's, you get a ship and some money, you go own the frickin' universe. It'll take you ages to do it, but you can do it. I can create my own complexes, my own ships, my own fleets. Oh, man, that really, really makes me excited. I like to create things. I like to have my... It's the megalomaniac in me, and indeed Megalomania is a prime example of one of those games that allowed you to create stuff. But when it comes to WoW, the creativity is non-existent. You don't create anything. You're a production line. That's the biggest problem I've got with it. You are some glorified factory. A walking, talking, questing, grinding, flaming, QQing, crying, whining factory. And it's just so disappointing. And indeed, why wouldn't it be? How is that a good thing? Someone please explain how that is a good thing. It's not. So is not. And it's embarrassed me, really, to say that I play WoW whenever I talk about crafting. Because someone will just turn around and say, well, what do you know about crafting? You play World of Warcraft, it's got a terrible crafting system. And you're bloody right! You are absolutely 100% correct in that assumption. It does have a really bad crafting system. Because there's nothing to it. Get mats, make thing. Thing is always same as other thing. It's a printing press. It's a good comparison, really, isn't it? The printing press is very useful, but it's quite dull in comparison to, say, illuminated manuscript. If you don't know what that is, then you're... oh, God. Seriously, go Google it. Get some damn culture into you. Illuminated manuscripts, ladies and gentlemen. Each one is slightly different. It's an art to create an illuminated manuscript. It takes a long time. You are creating something. You are crafting something. A printing press doesn't craft anything. It just makes copies. It's a freaking photocopier. That's what you are. You are walking, talking, whining, QQing, flaming, screaming photocopier when you make things in WoW with a crafting system. Occasionally you will discover new recipes, which are the same as recipes that other people have. You will create the same kind of item every single time, with rare exceptions. And even in those rare exceptions, you will create a variety of stuff. Like, say, you can create some rings that might be slightly different in terms of stats. A random enchantment on them. But it's very rare. You don't really get any input into it either. Like, for instance, I think there are a number of games, both single-player, multiplayer, and massively multiplayer, that allow you to modify an existing recipe with something rare or unique, so you can power up a particular item using that. That doesn't exist. The nearest that we've ever gotten to that, I think, is if you remember, the Lionheart Blade. Oh yes, I remember the Lionheart Blade. When was that? When did that happen? Was that TBC? Oh god, it's so long ago. I'm gonna have to check that out. I'm gonna Google that right now. The Lionheart Blade. It's an item in world. Yes, item level 107. That was TBC. The Lionheart Blade could be upgraded twice, and also the Storm Herald and things like that. That could be upgraded to Lionheart Executioner, I believe was the best version, and one of its components was the Lionheart Champion and 5 Nether Vortexes. And before that, of course, you could take the Lionheart Blade and apply 8 Primal Nethers and 2 Primal Might. That was about as close as they got to upgrading your gear that way. So sad, is it not? So very sad. Now, I think the reason that archaeology is a step forward is because it's something different. They haven't advanced gathering professions since vanilla, really. The only major change I can think of in terms of gathering professions, in fact, is the fishing schools. You remember the fishing schools? I'm sure you do. Think about it. What major changes have there been to mining? Yeah, exactly. What major changes have there been to herbalism? Yeah, thought so. Nothing. In 6 years, they have not advanced it one bit. They've not made it any more interesting, and you know what? At the time, the gathering professions were perfectly fine, but it's 6 years down the road, and Blizzard has not kept up with the curve. And you know why? Because they haven't really had any competition, which is pretty sad, isn't it? They'd had some legitimate competition besides, say, Eve and maybe Lotro. Bear in mind, Lotro has a better crafting system, but not by much. And Eve's just so different, you can't apply that principle to WoW anyway. They just haven't had any competition that has urged them forward and pushed them in order to make a better crafting system and a better gathering system in any way, shape, or form. And incidentally, I might add things like, oh, it gives you a buff. Yeah, that's a massive change. I can see them picking it up at this very moment to get those buffs. No. And the fact that you can now mine in one hit instead of 3. That's not a major change. That's convenience. That should have been in there to begin with. That's not a major change to the way gathering works. What you should be doing is you should be taking the principle of gathering and making it better. Making it more advanced. Making it more enjoyable to do. And it's just not happening. However, with Cataclysm, they have finally gotten around to advancing the gathering profession somehow with this secondary skill archaeology. A lot of you have probably watched the video. You're probably aware of what archaeology does. I certainly hope not. If not, let me give you a brief overview. Archaeology involves you going to various dig sites. There are always 4 dig sites on every single continent if you are level appropriate. That means if you are level 20, which is the basic starting level, you will have dig sites on 2 continents. You will not have dig sites in Outland, and you will not have dig sites in Northrend. And your dig sites will also be appropriate to the level you are. So you're not going to be given a Twilight Highlands dig site if you are level 27. That would be kind of silly. So you have 4 dig sites at any given time, and they rotate. Those dig sites are yours. There may be other people in the dig site, but they cannot affect how much you can gather from said dig site. It is not the same as mining a node. You go to the dig site, and you click the surveying tool. Once you click the surveying tool, a little telescope and a light will pop up. The telescope will point in the direction of where the item is, and the light will tell you how far away you are. So, what can you do? Well, you can triangulate your position and things like that, and that's probably a good idea, or you can just follow it around if you so desire. You'll get the hang of it very quickly, and you will unearth an artifact. Those artifacts are a currency. They do not fill your bag slots. So you get shards of a particular race, yeah? And there are currently, I think, 10, was it 10? I can't recall. And they're going to be adding more races available to research. Now, I researched a lot of trolls because they're, of course, the best race. I went to troll dig sites. They were in troll areas, so of course I got troll artifacts. I got the shards, I got enough shards, and I made a grey that was basically useless but gave me a little bit of lore and could sell. Of course, that was very low level. Now, I've had some guys in my guild that have now created epic items out of this. Yes, I did just say epic items. Would you like to know what? Well, I can probably give it to you. What is it? Tyrande. Let's see. I should be able to Google this fairly easily. It's called Tyrande's Favorite Doll. This is an item. It's an epic. It's an item level 359. And it comes from archaeology. It is a trinket. The flavor text is, Tyrande is the high priestess of Elune and the leader of the Sentinels. She grew up in the ancient city of Suramar near the Well of Eternity, along with the brothers Malfurion and Illidan's Storm Rage. Tyrande's idyllic childhood proved in sharp contrast for the sorrow and conflict that she would have to endure in a later life. Blah, 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 lore. The trinket is level 85, item level 359. It improves haste rating by 321. And your healing spells grant Inner Eye, increasing spirit by 103 for 15 seconds, and it stacks up to 5 times. Yes, it does. Nice, isn't it? That is from archaeology. So it's not just armor and weapons, you can get trinkets as well. It's pretty nice, isn't it? It is, what one might say, delicious. But this profession is just so much more interesting than anything else. It is the most interesting way to create new items. And that highlights 2 things. Firstly, Blizzard did good with archaeology. People might watch my video and think it's highly repetitive, but there's a, not so much an addictive, but a compelling property to that particular profession. It allows you to do things that are kind of neat. It's pretty fun running around, finding artifacts, and being a digger, an archaeologist, whatever, finding stuff and seeing what you create next and getting the little tastes of lore. It's just so much more interesting than making items with tailoring. Great. Awesome. I have this. And what's the lore behind this blue item that you just made? Well, there isn't one, because I just collected a bunch of cloth of the AH. It's a profession you actually have to invest time in, and I think you feel more rewarded that way. You feel maybe a bigger attachment to the items that you created because you actually dug them up. You created them, even though there are so many. It's like, this is my artifact. There are many like it, but this one's mine. And a little bit of lore attached to it. It's just so much more interesting. Even the UI is better than the standard crafting UI. And the second thing it highlights is just how far behind Blizzard is with crafting right now. And with gathering. They have to do more with it. The experience is going to help. But I just think they've got to vary things up and make things way more interesting than they are now. And right now, they just aren't. They just aren't. They're not interesting. I would love to say that I was really intrigued by crafting in some way or gathering, but I can't say that because that would be a lie. Please do something about that. Please make it more interesting. Please engage someone beyond looking at a list and saying, this is what I'm going to print today, this is what I'm going to photocopy today. I am not a goddamn production line. My name is Total Biscuit, you're listening to Blue Please here on CynicalBrit.com. This song describes how I feel when I do a lot of crafting. It's called Mechanical Man. Enjoy.